Hello, this is our third lecture in 412, essay writing. We have spoken before about the format of writing in general, how we use paragraphs, how we write at least 5 paragraphs in an essay, more or less. We talked about how we follow one line from beginning to end, how we turn every idea we have into this one line, one idea, and we support that idea. We don't write about everything in the world. We have a plan, we start with it. We have a purpose for writing. We talked about how we turn this into sentences. Today I continue with the same ideas, with writing arguments. But today my point is to start with reading. We are doing writing, not reading, but reading leads to writing. And when we test the abilities of students in writing, we give them a passage of reading to comment on as a piece of writing. So we ask them about the purpose of the writer in writing this text, not simply the meaning of words or even sentences. We ask them about the manner of development, how a particular writer develops his idea, and lots of such things. So my question will start today by asking students about what they read before taking this lecture. What about the current issues they read about? We don't start writing without any ideas, so we need to read about things around us. We express ourselves and current issues in the society we live in. So I used the Haram Weekly of last week, as many other newspapers, and I see one interesting topic. A writer exposes an idea about fasting. And then the writer asks the question, why do you do that? We take this issue. Some people fast at certain times of the year, especially in the month of Ramadan, or sometimes in other days of the week, or at any time, for a religious purpose. But some people say there is more than one reason behind that. There is the religious purpose, and there is also a medical one. It's good for our health. I'm not going to deal with this subject here, but I take the newspaper, I browse, and then I see a topic like that and I start thinking. The writer of the topic is asking me to think about that. So I think and then I start writing. I write an essay on my own and I say, we fast for specific causes, for specific reasons, and these are my causes. Then we write that down. That's how we get ideas. We are readers first and then writers. Of course, we also live, we experience life and different experiences, and we talk about our experiences. But reading gives us one source of ideas. Also, reading will give us the format in which we write. So, reading this particular newspaper, I read about this subject, but I read other newspapers and magazines. The last 3 weeks or so, I read in The Economist a number of essays analyzing the world economy, the capitalist economy, the financial crisis around the world. Can we say today that capitalism is ended, or it has come to an end? Or shall we say that capitalism is looking into itself again and trying to rejuvenate itself? Are there problems concerning that? We read in the newspapers about the financial crisis, and The Economist in the last 3 weeks or so is dealing with that, together with other things. We read this in others and others, but most of the students will read the local newspapers. We read that in Arabic, but also in English, because we need to link ideas to language. So, one issue of the Haram Weekly that I read last week or so raised this topic about why people fast. We have here why we fast. Since this is a title, we don't turn it into a question format. We don't say why do we fast unless we write a question mark at the end. Why we fast is a title. Students would think about this and write, for example, we have religious reasons for that, we have medical reasons, and then we have others. Think about it. We can write better about what we know, and that's why I started with this topic. Many of the students taking this course will not be able to write about the financial crisis, but they can write about this subject or any other. What are we living? We talk about what we are living now, our experiences. We express ourselves. Express ourselves, talk about ourselves. Even the public things around us, the current issues, they influence us one way or another. I take Al-Ahram Weekly as one sample of a good newspaper, this local and also international, because it is in English and it is available to many students. Some students will read other things like the Arab news, for example, the Saudi Gazette, the Emirate news, the Times of Jordan or so. All of them are good because they make this link between this culture and that culture, culture in the Arab world and culture of the West, because the language will make this kind of link. And this is the area where we exist, we students of translation. We need to read these newspapers together with others. There's another topic in the Haram Weekly, which is foreign universities in Egypt. Purpose, and then you have any ideas about that? There are foreign universities in Egypt and in other parts of the Arab world. Now, does this current issue raise some ideas, some thinking, some thoughts, feelings, and so can we write about that? Again, I'm not writing an argument now. I'm dealing with one aspect of writing, which is reading. I need sources. There are other sources to get information from. What are your sources? There is a very good one, the internet. I suggest one site, but there are so many that are really very good, but let's see this one. It's Arts and Letters Daily. We write it as AL, then daily, one word. And of course we have www. And then com after that. When you are using the computer, you write Arts and Letters Daily, just that, in the address bar of Microsoft Explorer or in Opera, for example, and then you press Control and Enter, and the computer will pad this for you, will write the rest of what's needed, like the www. Or even what's before it. Now, why is this particular site important? It is some kind of a page of contents, or let's call it a blog, where we don't read any newspaper article in that one, but we read a very short summary. As we said, it's a blog. It says to us, there is an issue about this point, 3 or 4 lines, and then another one about another point, like the page of contents. We read the page here, and this will refer us to many topics. There is more after every topic. We click on more. It takes us to the Washington Post, New York Times. It takes us to Haram Weekly itself, or any other newspaper around the world that will publish some issues or some articles of interest. There are many arguments, there are many book reviews, there are many articles of interest, and if I browse this site, I'll be able to see the content or a reference to the content of hundreds of newspapers around the world. This site is designed for students of higher education. So many students around the world who study English like us will be using this site to read current issues in English in the famous or the important newspapers like the Times of London, the Guardian Weekly, the Independent, the New York Times, etc. So why not try to see this? And it gives us small summaries, very short summaries, and refers us to the newspapers. Now, I would ask about any interesting issues that was raised in the last 2 weeks, and then I ask question mark, question mark, question mark, which means in writing we have to invent, we have to read, we have to experience and do something on our own. We are not learning things by heart, we are not collecting data, but we read, we browse in general, and we have these kind of experiences, then we turn them into writing. We expose ourselves to ideas. This is the point. By expose ourselves to idea, it's not collecting data. When we talk about a subject like, let's write about women judges, so people research women judges, this is not our point. When we talk about pharmaceutical companies and medicines, our point is not researching medicines. Our point is that we expose ourselves to ideas, lots and lots of ideas, not particular ones. So we become knowledgeable about what's around us, and then when we write, we naturally remember some elements from here and elements from there. My point again is that we don't study in depth one particular subject, but we simply browse and read what interests us. And of course we have to expose ourselves to as much English as possible in these kinds of newspapers that will give us current English and the kind of English we use today. Then we can write. We are good readers, then we can be good writers when you apply, of course, the rules of writing. We have to be good readers before we can write at all. However, do not copy, plagiarize, and this is a very important point. Whenever we say the internet is a wealth of information and ideas, people are so lazy and they simply copy and paste. And this is not a good idea. This is theft. When I copy and paste, I'm simply stealing. I expose myself to ideas, I read these, and if I want to copy, not an article, not only an article, but even one paragraph, maybe even one sentence, if I want to copy anything, I have to give the author of this sentence or paragraph credit. If I take any information from the internet, I should say, I took this from this particular site, and it was written by this particular writer. We don't copy. We learn, and when we take something, we say we took it from this particular place. So no plagiarizing. No, this kind of theft is not allowed. It's immoral. Document. I want students to document their essays. Document your essay. You say, I took this part from that writer. I took this part from this writer. We have endnotes at the end of the essay where we refer to the articles we used, and in the body of the essay we mention the writers. This is the meaning of documenting our essay. Mention the sources, the writers, the books, the articles, the pages, and the date and the time we took this kind of information, the editions and so on. Interact with the sources and tab your own experience. These sources will give me ideas that I will not simply take. I will read, understand, digest. I will compare one piece with another. I will refuse some parts. I interact with the sources. I don't simply absorb them, but I interact, I take and I leave, I change, I modify, I compare, I infer, etc. And then I use my own experience. This exposure to ideas is the background, but at the end it is my own experience that I write about. My own experience that's educated by this kind of exposure. Create your own essay. And we really mean create. We create an essay, so when we say we write about a particular subject, we don't simply get it from another source, write it again, and we say this is our own. We write our own. Maybe we can say there is nothing new under the sun. Whenever we want to write about a subject, people talked about it before. All the ideas are there. They have been there. No. At least we can rearrange things in a different manner. When we rearrange the ideas that were already there, we create new ideas. New ideas don't come out of scratch. New ideas come from our interaction with the old ideas. I listen to the old ideas. I compare them. I refuse some. I accept some. I add to parts of these ideas. I put them in a different order, I infer new ideas, then I come up with something new. What I come up with is a creation, not creation out of nothing, but it is out of material that I got from other people. When I take something directly, I give credit to the person from whom I took this kind of information. But the end result is that I write something new that depends on other people as well. So we will not be frightened saying that we can never write anything that's new. How can we, students, add information or add knowledge? But this is how life is. It is the students at the university who create the information. They learn from others, they practice, they experience, and then they add. If universities don't add, universities are useless. So actually when we are even very beginners, we do add just a little bit of ourselves, of our own effort. Later on, this will be a lot, and then we say that universities create knowledge. They don't simply consume knowledge. So we are creating knowledge while we are starting as beginners, beginner writers. So we really will create. Now we create ideas, we create sentences, paragraphs, we create the sentence. This is not something simple, this is really something terrific, something really formidable, something magnificent if we can create sentences. We don't write what we have learned, we create new sentences, as you said, not only the ideas, even how we put words together. we create sentences, and if we do this, we can create paragraphs. So we say here create sentences, create paragraphs. The exclamation mark here means this is an order, it's an imperative. So how come we write a sentence with a subject? Because this is an imperative. We say you should create sentences, exclamation mark. Create paragraphs. Now this is an order. Create essays. That's what we need. You create your own essay. You actually create it. You don't copy, you don't plagiarize. Symbol, 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 but original. So it doesn't have to be very complicated, very simple, but it is original. Original means your own. This seems more difficult than simply learning topics by heart and pouring them down on the exam paper. People do this. They learn things by heart, whatever kind of information, and of course essays included. They learn essays on pollution, on education, on sports, whatever. And they say, we may get lucky, and then we are asked to write something on, let's say, pollution. Now this is not acceptable. You have to write your own. So learning by heart is easier, much easier, and that's why many people do it. Creating something new is really difficult, but not impossible. If we start with simple sentences, we can do something good. So, yes, maybe it's difficult, but it is the academic requirement. At a university, we are required to create sentences, paragraph, essays, ideas. We do something on our own. This is an academic requirement. And it shows more self-respect. We respect ourselves. We're not simply imitators of others. We are not simply machines that can save some information and then retrieve it. Even computers today do more than that. Computers do more than save and retrieve. They do more. Computers can infer, can reorganize, can do a lot. Human beings can do better than computers. So we respect ourselves when we create things. It is a skill badly needed and can easily be acquired if we simply try. We will be surprised that we have abilities that we never tapped. When we create sentences, as we say now, we discover that we had abilities. We do. Human beings do have great abilities that they never use, they never resort to, they never try to get out. We will surprise that we'll discover that there are abilities that we have inside of us that we never try to use because we said it's easier to learn by heart. Get something from somebody and give it back to somebody else, and we do not exist. Look inside you, you have this ability. Just train to write essays originally. We have intelligence that's lying there in the corner, neglected. It's time we used our intelligence. It's high time we did that. Now let's come to arguments. I finished talking about reading. Let's talk about arguments once more, and this is our major interest in this term. Basic discourse types. This term is the argument. This is what we're going to do. A point of view that we defend. An outline. Example of a thesis and division of supporting ideas. We need a thesis, a point of view, a claim that we are going to support with a number of sub-ideas. There's a division of the sub-ideas. Let's take this idea. The idea is computer software copyrights should be respected. Now, is this a thing we accept or not? Some people will say, no, we do not accept that. We have our reasons. But other people say we accept it. This is a controversial issue. Some people say we accept that. Some people say we don't accept it. But let's try to know what it means. Computer software copyrights should be respected. This means I cannot copy software and use it without paying royalties to the owner of the software. In other words, a company like Microsoft produces software like Microsoft Windows. I buy a computer that doesn't have Windows on it. I don't buy Windows. Then I need a copy of Windows. I ask a friend of mine to copy his software, Windows, then I use it on my computer. This means I do not respect copyright. Copyright means I have to buy the software. Some people say and this is the general idea, this is the legal one, that the copyright of these companies should be respected. If we say why do we say that? If my claim is this, my claim is that everybody should respect copyright in computer software, which means nobody should copy from anybody else, unless of course the company allows us to copy and we have already paid money for the company. Now we should respect that because of a moral reason, a legal one, an intellectual one, and a practical one. We'll see this clearly when we explain every one of them. But what's in front of me is a diagram of the thinking process. I think in this manner. I should respect the copyrights, which means I should never copy. I should buy original software and pay money for the company because of a moral reason. A moral reason means no stealing. I don't steal hardware. I should also not steal software. For example, nobody would go into a shop and steal a computer system or a mobile phone or anything that we can touch. Everybody knows this is illegal. Everybody knows that this is immoral. Everybody knows this is against religion. If I go into a place, a hardware shop, any shop, then I take something like this that I can touch, I put it in my pocket, I go out, I don't pay for it. I know it's very clear that I've still stolen something. And I know very clearly that this is immoral. This is clear for everyone, but some people don't know another thing. If I copy software, I take a software, a CD-ROM that has Windows on it or Microsoft Word or whatever program, I take it from a friend of mine, then I copy this one, I give him back his CD. This copying is stealing because the CD-ROM itself will cost something that like £1, 1 Egyptian pound, the CD-ROM, the thing I touch. The material on the software, the material on the CD, which is the software, let's call it the ideas of the program, will cost something like £2,000. So when I buy the CD-ROM, which has a program on it like Microsoft Office from a shop, I pay something like £2,000, not for the CD, for the thing I touch, but for the software. I use it at home, I have the right to use it. If a friend of mine takes this CD-ROM and copies it to his computer and uses the software without paying the £2,000 to the company, this means that my friend stole something that is not touched, the software, the ideas. Many people don't see stealing here, but it is the same idea. You can steal something we can touch, something we cannot touch, something concrete, something abstract. You can steal the hardware, like the CD-ROM or the mobile phone. You can steal the ideas. That's the program. A similar one, to clarify it, is when I copy a book. There's a novel by Naguib Mahfouz. It costs something like £30 to buy it. I take a copy from a friend and I photocopy it. I don't buy a book, the original novel. I don't pay the £30 to the publisher. I'm stealing the ideas. I'm stealing the novel. It's like the software in computers. The same thing when I copy a song and so on. So the general idea is that copyrights should be respected. Copyrights should be respected because one major reason that we mentioned first, which is the moral aspect. Moral aspect, if we do not respect copyrights, we are stealing. So no stealing. I hope this is clear. Now we go back to the diagram. We say, at the top we say computer software copyrights should be respected. This is the thesis, which means a point of view. This point of view has to be supported. Otherwise it's not an argument. An argument is the point of view, the claim, and the support of that claim. I support my claim saying that I respect, which means I don't copy, software copyrights because of a moral reason. And I mentioned the idea of stealing, and I keep explaining it. I explain and I give examples, like when we copy a CD-ROM, a program, etc. Then we have to support this with another idea, sub-idea going in the same direction. Another idea is the legal one. There is a legal reason why we don't steal software. The legal one means to avoid trouble with the law. There is a law, it's a legal point. We avoid trouble with the law. So the legal point is another reason why you don't steal. The meaning of avoid trouble with the law, we need to explain this more. There is a law that prosecutes people who steal software. For example, the government and the police will arrest people who use software that's not original, authentic, that's copied. First, they fine them, they pay money, and the government will confiscate the computers that were used in using this kind of software. Then, when this is repeated again, sometimes they pay a larger fine or may even go to prison. So, there is the law. Whether we accept the idea or not, we have to obey it. The difference between legal and moral is something inside us that says we shouldn't do it. Legal means something outside us that prevents us from doing it. If we do it, we're punished. So there are two things. We obey the moral imperative that says don't steal, and then we obey the law. Two things. Are there other things? Yes, there's an intellectual point. There is an intellectual point that says we encourage creativity and progress. If we steal software, the companies will go bankrupt. They don't have money, so they cannot continue. They stop. So they will not create new software. If I buy the software instead of stealing, the company will have money, and they will give this money to the people who write the software. And these people will write again. So I encourage creativity. We create new software. And I encourage progress and modern technology and such things. So the intellectual side is that we encourage these companies to produce more software. We encourage the thinkers, the writers, the programmers to do more and to make society progress intellectually. There is another one, the practical one, the kind of benefit, the benefit for myself, not only the moral thing, but we go to how I benefit from this, from not stealing the software. The practical one is what? To get support. When I buy the software, I can go to the company and ask for support. A problem happens, they fix it. And avoid viruses. When I copy software, there might be a virus involved, so I ruin my computer and the data I have. But if this is original, this will be guaranteed not to have viruses in them. Sometimes companies or somebody would use these viruses to discourage people from using pirated software. So those who use pirated software, the stolen one, suffer from viruses, computer viruses, of course. And they cannot get support. You can't get support unless you have already bought the program from the company. Now we look at this diagram again, and we see that we have a claim: computer software should be respected. And this claim is supported by 4 different points, but all of them say respect, respect, respect. It's one line. Or we shouldn't steal, we shouldn't steal, we shouldn't steal. We shouldn't copy, etc. This is from beginning to end, from the word computer to the word viruses, is one essay going in one line saying that we should respect copyrights in computer software, but it should be divided into this way, and each point of these should be written in one paragraph. The claim will be written in the first paragraph after the introduction. Introduce the subject, and then we say this at the end of paragraph 1, the thesis statement. Then we support this with these 4 ideas. Then at the end, of course, we write a conclusion saying the same idea once more, that software copyrights is a good idea that should be followed or upheld by everybody in the society. We say it again. Then we make a commentary. Now, this is one outline and one argument. Then we have a commentary on what we have written. It's a controversial issue. There are lots of controversial issues that we can talk about. Controversial issues means people don't agree on these issues. People say yes and people say no. People say we should respect, others say we should not respect. How? We try to see things from different angles. I see the 2 points of view. Thus, we enhance our understanding of different issues. At the same time, we can write original ideas and actually express ourselves, and instead of simply recycle what we hear around us. The meaning of this paragraph about controversial ideas is that in many issues we don't have one point of view. We have at least 2 points of view. We are learning now to see the different points of view concerning every issue. Instead of simply reading about issues and believing everything, without thinking. We think critically. We see that every issue, or maybe every issue, will have at least 2 points of view, can be seen from 2 angles, maybe 4, 5 or more. We sometimes write an argument dealing with things from one angle, from one point of view. We may even try to write from the opposite point of view. So, for example, we say we should respect software copyrights. People say we shouldn't. Why do they say that? Let's see what they say and write this in another argument. So we have 2 opposing points of view. Why is this good? Because at the end, when I study the 2 points of view, I can enhance my ability to understand the subject. I have seen things from 2 angles. Now I can make a good judgment. So what we're doing, writing arguments, while we're writing the arguments, we stick to only 1 point, not 2. Because later on, maybe in the next term, we study debates. We study how we see 2 points of view, how we study things in a wider way, how we see facts. But this term, we are writing about writing arguments, points of view from one angle, like a lawyer defending a client. The lawyer will defend the client, taking 1 point of view in defense of that client. The lawyer will never stand against the client. There is another lawyer, this is the prosecution, that will stand against the client. So justice will be fulfilled when I have 2 lawyers, one lawyer for defense and another one for the accusation. This is the prosecution. Anyway, we are writing arguments from one angle, but we understand there are other angles, there are other points of view. And we have this clear in our mind, especially when the question usually say, are you for this or against it? So we take one angle and write about it from beginning to end. We are a part of the controversy, we choose one part of it. Now we consider something else. Consider these points. Computer software copyrights may not be respected in certain cases. This is the counter argument. This is not the argument we dealt with a few minutes ago. This is about people saying, no, we are not going to respect that, but we have our reasons. Why? They may say this. These are the 3 points they can use to defend their counter argument. They say students using software. Students using software is 1 point why it is really very difficult to respect the copyrights in this area. Students of engineering are unable to pay something like thousands and thousands of pounds to buy AutoCAD from Autodesk. So there is a problem here. How can students do that? Students don't make money. They are not companies. Students who need to study different software, how can they buy, let's say, 5 or 6 different software dealing in the same subject, and because they want to study what's going on in the market, they want to teach themselves, they want to learn, they don't make money. How can they spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on software? So students is one cause why sometimes respecting this copyright is not a good idea. This is an angle of view, a point of view. We raise this one because later on companies will solve the problem. How? When you say students cannot pay, we are not for immorality, we are not for stealing, but we are raising the point because this is a controversy and we are moving for something to be done. What is done here is this. Companies will give students a chance to use software at minimal prices or for no prices at all. So for example, software that would cost £2,000 like Microsoft Office will cost a student something like £25 if the student says, I'm a student, and he has a card, and when the company of course has this kind of program, they sell the software to students at minimal prices. So what I'm talking about here is not that we say we are going to steal software, we are going to copy software, but we are raising the different angle. The first angle was no stealing whatsoever. Then another person will say, stop, give me a chance to say something. I say, no, I need to steal because students cannot pay the money. So when this is raised, we think about it and we say, okay, there is a case here, case for students. So this is a kind of discussion that will make things clearer and will make companies, the government and universities find a solution. So let's go on with the controversy just from this angle, from the angle of standing against copyrights. Back again, we say there are 3 points. We may not respect the software. This is one lawyer saying that, because students cannot pay all that money. Again, poor countries, not only students, there are countries that are poor in general. If we study the income of the whole country, or the many people in this country, they cannot pay all that money. You can't pay software for thousands of pounds in the USA and in Egypt. So what about poor countries? What can they do? Then we come to another thing, unreasonable prices, cost of software. Companies of the software, they don't make us pay the cost, or the cost and a small margin of profit. Sometimes they make exorbitant profits out of this software. For example, if the software can be sold reasonably at the price of £100 per program, they would sell this for £10,000. The prices are really unreasonable, so the companies have to think again about it. Before saying to people, don't steal our software, they should think, are the prices reasonable? So there is a problem with the companies themselves. There are poor students, or students in general, all students are poor, or poor countries, and there are the prices which are unreasonable. So these are 3 points that will make some lawyers say that computer software copyrights may not be respected in these cases. Another point, not the companies selling software, but the companies selling medicines. Pharmaceutical companies try to protect their patents, intellectual property, while some people fight this. What are the reasons? Pharmaceutical companies, this is talking about medicine, these companies have patents. Of course, they are trying to protect their patents, which is called again the intellectual property or the copyrights, and they don't want people, of course, to copy the ingredients or the formula and make their own medicines. Now, where do we stand here? If students take one standpoint, they have to say why. And we can talk about this saying certain companies have exorbitant prices for their medicines, so people cannot respect the copyright in this case. If I take the same ideas we used when talking about software, I can say that instead of students, I talk about patients as poor patients. Patients, sick people, they don't make money out of their disease. It's not like companies, for example, using AutoCAD in their projects when they build bridges or when they build houses or cities, and they make a lot of money. So part of this money can be paid to the companies of the software. So it looks very reasonable for companies that make money to pay money for the software. And this is, of course, a fine idea. What about students? Students don't use the software in order to make money. They use the software simply to learn. They cannot pay. Now we come back to the medical companies or pharmaceutical companies. The clients of these companies are the sick people, the patients who do not make money out of their disease, of course. They have to buy the medicine. So we can say that some sick people, many sick people, are poor. They cannot pay these prices. So doesn't this raise a point? Are these companies allowed to sell medicines at any price, very high prices? For example, as if they are selling something luxurious people can use or not use. If they're making something of a luxury, people can get rid of it. They say, we don't want this anymore. But if it is a medicine, people can never say we can't or we don't want to buy the medicine. They have to do that. So one thing we can say about pharmaceutical companies here, some people say we are against these copyrights, in certain cases at least. Sick people, they have to buy the medicine. It's an obligation, it's a compulsory. They are coerced to buy it. So please don't impose on them certain prices they cannot afford. This is one thing, being sick. Another one, poor countries and poor people. How can they pay all these prices? Sometimes the prices are really so high that people say it's a luxury to be sick. Only rich people can afford to be sick because they have to pay a lot. So what about the majority of people who are poor, especially in a third world country? A third world country, a poor country, what about abiding by the law? What about abiding by the law and respecting copyrights in this case? Some lawyers will say poor countries cannot pay. The sick people cannot pay because they are sick and they don't make money and they don't buy this as a luxury. So we said being sick. Second, the idea of poverty. We can use a third point about the same thing we said about about the computer companies. These companies have unreasonable prices. Some pharmaceutical companies are so rich, they are even richer than drug dealers because the prices are really very high. They have their patents that they jealously defend. No other companies can use the formula, so they can set any prices they like. So we hear of medicines that will cost hundreds of thousands of pounds, or treatment in a hospital or so that will make the patient foot a bill that reads, of course, in hundreds of thousands of pounds. Do these companies follow morality when they impose or when they coerce people to pay all these high prices? We know, again, like the software, that some medicines will only cost something like £10, and the price of producing that will cost another £10. The royalties given to the scientists who invented the formula or discovered the medicine will cost them £100. So everything will add up to something like £200 per packet of medicine, and then it's sold for £10,000 or so. And we say this is immorally exorbitant. The prices are so high and they cannot be respected, even by rich companies, even by people who use this medicine for luxury. Now, here are 3 points raised by lawyers defending people who broke the law by not respecting the copyright in the medicine field. We said sick people, because they are sick first, the idea itself. The other idea, we talked about poor countries in the third world. The third one, the companies themselves being immoral in imposing prices that completely unreasonable, prices that are completely unreasonable. We can say another thing about knowledge. Many scientists who are involved in finding new medicines, they do this for the love of science and for the love of humanity. These scientists, they are employed by companies that will use their efforts and impose patents on these efforts. So knowledge is imprisoned. And instead of knowledge being for free, for humanity, instead of scientists taking the salaries they get without the money or the royalties paid to the companies, instead of the small cost that knowledge costs people, there are things which are really very high and will make science not become science anymore, that will make science become simply a commerce. And I think that all scientists don't like that, don't like the idea of their being considered as merchants. Any scientist who's really a scientist will say, I am a scientist and I believe in truth. I believe in serving humanity. I don't believe in serving myself. The only thing I do to serve myself is the credit, the moral credit I get for being a good scientist, for serving humanity. Not wealth, not filthy wealth, not this amount of money is not what I'm after. So the third point is the idea of knowledge. Knowledge in the public domain. There are people, lots of people who say knowledge should be for everyone. Knowledge should be put in the public domain. Scientists will get salaries, will get rewards, etc., but not in the way it is now sometimes. Scientists really are very content with what they get. They don't want to be merchants. So knowledge for knowledge's sake, the idea is there. So this is another point. Students will write this one, and then maybe they write the counter argument. We respect the idea that there should be copyrights in pharmaceutical companies too, like encouraging scientists, like lots of these ideas. Try to do this as well. When students write about these things, they will read books, newspapers. I want them to look at them this way. I have in front of me a number of books, and students will get information from the book. We should do it this way. I get the book, and I saw that this book has a personality. I look at the title, like Jung, and then the writer of the book, and I read here Anthony Stevens, writing about Jung. I read about the publisher, Oxford. Then I go inside this page, I have the title again. Then on the back of that page, I have the copyright, the date, and the edition. I get information from that book, but I will not take the information if I write it in my essay without reference to what book this is. I have to take the book and consider it as a person that has a name and has identity. So I study everything about the format of the book, the setting, everything about it, and then the book itself. Everything about the book starts with the title, of course. The title here is the book about Jung, Carl Gustav Jung. Who the writer is, I know the name of the writer, Stevens, and then his full name. I know the publisher as university, the Oxford University Press. I know the date of the publication. There's the first edition. It's published in 206. And I see the page of content, and I see the subject dealt with here. Then I know everything about it. I start reading the book. Then if I like to take one paragraph from here or there in my essay or my research, I will document that. I say the writer Stevens, and I mention the full name, and I say Anthony Stevens in Jung, the book, said. Then if the book is in front of me, I copy from it directly, direct quote. And then I mention in the end note the name of the book, the publisher, the year, etc. If I don't remember, of course, I don't have the book in front of me, I don't have the direct quote, I mention the ideas mentioned here by Stevens in his book Jung, and I say Stevens in his book Jung said, and I paraphrase what he said. Here I'm using ideas from another writer, but I document what I'm saying. I document my essay. I use books in English like this to raise the standard of my English. Students started studying English, some of them, using the translation method. So they have text that's written for students, text that's chosen for the school, and sometimes text that's doctored. They are changed a little, simplified, oversimplified. First they are used as simple text, and then they are simplified even more. So things are not the natural kind of thing, but they start learning this way as beginners. And sometimes in books they have some terminology with the Arabic translation. They started with this and then start writing. Now they cannot write if they don't read English as the native speakers of English read. We read the text without imagining there is another language like Arabic or French or whatever. I read the ideas and they become a part of me. Later on when I write, if I'm not using the book in front of me now, I read hundreds of books. They are in the background. When I write, I remember the ideas and the expressions. Not, of course, sentences. I don't learn anything by heart, but the ideas come connected with the expressions, with the wordings. And by exposing myself to a lot of English, as I said at the beginning of the lecture, but I focused at the beginning on newspapers. You can also read books on different subjects. I will write and I will remember the wordings. Sometimes they will just come. The brain will retrieve the idea and the wording together. Now another thing I want to say about reading, because if we take a test in writing, one part of the test could be reading as the test of this course, 412. We test students on their ability to read, not as general reading, but reading for writing. So as we write with the format, I want them to read the format of the reading. So like reading a book, reading an essay. I want the students to read the whole essay from beginning to end, just like the book, and then tell me what the general thesis is, what the general idea is. So we are not reading text because we are searching for the meanings of words or even sentences. We are not reading this because it's called reading in the meaning of, we know the alphabet. We are reading as English should be read, meaning the first thing is the total, the global idea of the text. As I take the book in my hand, I feel it has a beginning, it has an end, it has a writer, it has a place of publication, it has a date, etc. When the students in the exam have text, they will have 1 page or 2 pages. It's exactly like a book. The first thing they should look at is the name of the writer. If they say this is a sheet of paper in the exam, it's not a book, but it is taken from a book, so your text will be documented. So before starting reading, I did this and I did that. Who is I? I read at the end of the text, we find things like this: the source, or adapted from, or just the name of the writer. The text will be in front of me as paragraphs, let's say 5 or 6 paragraphs, and at the end we read something like this: Anthony Stevens, all right, and Jung underlined. So it's a book called Jung by Anthony Stevens. And the date of publication. If it is taken from a particular page, it's page such and such. How does this affect the meaning? Of course, the writer has an identity. The writer has a nationality, let's say. The writer has a place in time. He's a writer of the 16th century, a writer of the 20th century. Everything about the book in general like this, I hold it in my hand, all the text gives a meaning. For example, in a text that was given to students in an exam at a certain time, starts with the word I. And then after this, I want a wife. Wife, capital W, capital I, capital F, capital E. And then it goes on and on and on. At the end, Judy, cipher, in a particular article at a certain time, etc. Now, the very first thing is, I here is not a man. I here is a woman, because I see the book in front of me. It's a human being. It's a thing I can touch. I see it has a writer. I don't simply read I and then the dictionary says I means this person. A reading will read everything. I is a woman says I want a wife, so there has to be a meaning, another meaning, not the literal one. We discover when we read the text carefully that the writer does not want a wife. The writer says men say that they want women to be their slaves. Of course, we need to read the text to understand the meaning. But what I mean here, if you don't know that the writer is a woman, everything is lost. So I need to know it's a man, a woman, British, American, Irish, Egyptian. Is this written about this matter or that matter? So we read the whole thing, and our understanding of the text will be a correct one. Thank you.